Ladies and gentlemen,
Yes.
welcome to yet another episode of Msingi
We are
Talk,
not
where
yet.
we're not
yet.
meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. It's there.
Oh, okay, all right.
Oh,
Sorry.
Carol.
No.
No.
That.
Oh,
I
no.
really was. Oh, no.
All right.
So,
Please
go
come
ahead.
back again, Selector.
Come
Thank you
again,
so much
Selector.
for making time to join us today for yet another conversation. Msingi Talks, where today the topic is just men we need to talk. When Carol sent this to me, I said, men need to talk. Men need to talk about what? Money, heartbreaks, because we too are heartbroken. Or men, do we need to talk about our bellies or, our stretch marks? What do we need to talk about? And then she said that perhaps we're going to talk about masculinity, identity, and gender-based violence. And I'm happy because how I've been feeling of late is that we need more spaces for men to be real and for men to be vulnerable and for men to share their perspectives. That's non-judgmental. My name is Danish Odongo. I'm a journalist and I'll be moderator for this session today. But before I start, allow me to introduce Carol Nganga, who's the amazing host. Carol.
Hi, everybody, and karibuni sana to Msingi Talks. I can't believe it feels like a year ever since. We'll be a year in June doing Facebook Live, but the actual Msingi Talks, we started them in January last year, just before COVID happened. And we did two in person, then we stopped for a bit because we weren't sure about COVID. But generally, it's to invite you to Msingi, where we make the connection between faith, social justice, and advocacy. And to introduce Msingi, I have a video which I shall play.
What does social justice, activism, advocacy, and the Christian faith have in common? Is pursuing justice at all levels a spiritual discipline? How do we influence church leaders and Christians to advocate for justice and fight injustice? How can churches become the first line of defense for the socially unprotected? Msingi is a movement of people spurred by their Christian faith to answer these questions about social justice, advocacy, and activism. Msingi believes the church can be empowered to redemptively advocate for justice for the most oppressed, for those relegated to the fringes of society, for the disempowered, and those without access to power. In his inaugural sermon, Jesus spoke about those on the margins of society, about their freedom and their liberation. Pursuing justice is at the core of being a Jesus follower. Justice and righteousness is the foundation of God's throne. Msingi's name, call, heart, and bold mission draws from this, holding true to the tenets of God's kingdom. Our faith propels us to seek justice and spend ourselves on behalf of the poor. Justice is their shield and defender. At Msingi, we are about connecting the struggles that we all face. We are creating safe spaces to converse about social justice, curating content that enhances justice conversations, and in this way, uniting the stand for social justice and for advocacy. Engage the content, join in the conversations, connect to the movement. This is Msingi.
So that's Msingi, and today's conversation is one that I really wanted us to have, and I am honored. I will be in the background today, and I'll hand over the meeting to Danish.
Thank you so much, Carol. I cannot get enough of that soundtrack, and the narration and the messaging always warms my heart, especially the fact that it's about faith and justice and freedom, things that I'm very, very passionate about. And today I'm actually hosting legendary guests. One of them is actually a legendary journalist who hosts a very popular radio show. I remember very well that in my my early faith, I used to listen to him on Hope FM, and I'd wake up at 5 a.m. to join him in prayer. And I remember how my faith was really strengthened during that season. That's James Okumu. I'd like him to tell us his name, what he does. But with this question, even as we start, I need you to tell me, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a man to you? This point in your life, or perhaps at this point in your life. We start with James, then Eric, then Curtis.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you for for the invitation and for the opportunity to be a part of this discussion today. I believe it's a very important discussion that needs to be ongoing. As you said earlier, James Okumbu is my name. My middle name is Martin, in case you're wondering. I work I work with Family Media as a radio presenter, TV presenter, radio TV producer. Apart from that, I'm also a lead pastor at Destiny Chapel, somewhere in industrial area. And I'm blessed to be here. What does it mean to be a man? That's a question. That's the million-dollar question, so to speak. But reflecting on that question from my perspective, where I am at in life right now, for me, to be a man is Christ-likeness. If I was to sum it up in one word, it is Christ-likeness. And the reason why I say that is when I look at the Bible, which is my point of reference, God began by creating Adam, the first man, but Adam missed. But Jesus came to take us back to the original, and Jesus is called the last Adam. So for me, what a man should be like, what a man should speak like, what a man should behave like, how a man should conduct himself in public, the kind of relationships a man should have, are emulated in the life of Jesus Christ. So for me, manliness or masculinity is Christ-likeness in a nutshell.
I'm going to break down to us what Christ-likeness means to people who perhaps are not familiar with our faith, as in the next segment.
Okay.
Eric? Yeah.
Thank you, Danish. My name is Eric Mungai. I work with Yazua Africa. Yazua Africa is an organization that works with boys on leadership and masculinity primarily. And Yazua is Forge, is the Swahili word for Forge. So Forge Africa, we believe that men must be forged and that we must begin the process of forging men early in their teenagers and laying the right values and the right principles. For me, what does it mean to be a man today? Responsibility and duty. I think that defines masculinity for me. What are your responsibilities and what's your duty to your society and your community? And I'm glad to be here and I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Right. Sounds like a gladiator, Eric. Duty and responsibility. For Sparta! Curtis.
Yes.
Curtis, your mic is off.
Oh. Sorry. You guys were just seeing my mouth moving.
Yes.
What I was saying was good evening. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here, and I'm excited about this conversation. I am a father, and I direct an organization called Sankofa Student Ministries. Sankofa is a West African term meaning to return and pick it up. So some reclaiming we're going to have to do if we're going to forge Africa, as my brother Eric put it. We're going to have to reclaim some stuff to go back and pick some things up that we've lost along the way. So I disciple essentially young people, especially young adults, college age youth, primarily in Kenya, but also here in the States, which is where I am now. For a short period of time, what I hope will be a short period of time before I return to Kenya. So yeah. Oh, manhood, masculinity. I understand manhood to be consisting of a series of virtues, primarily. Wholeheartedness, I think, is primary, together with courage. The ability to live beyond one's own interests, to the interests of one's community, to take care of people, to protect people, particularly the most vulnerable and marginalized, and to give as well as receive. Honestly, when I was watching the video that Carol put for us, your values sound like what a man should be. You know, this integrating of justice and and spirituality and faith and caring about people who are not normally cared for or who wouldn't be cared for otherwise. That's man stuff. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Curtis.
Yeah.
And I like what you said, that you believe that men also supposed to receive, because I feel like sometimes we just give and give and give, and we also criticize a lot. So Percy, you had mentioned that, allow me to call you Pastor James, you had mentioned that for you, be a man is to be Christ-like. I needed to break down for me. And but I'm just going to add a question. I mean, for you, when you see news stories of women who have been, assaulted by men, some of them, killed, their body parts dismembered, and the atrocities that we see in this country, what comes to your mind as a father, of course, and as a pastor, and as somebody who believes masculinity is being Christ-like?
Okay. Talking about masculinity being Christ-like, I believe Curtis and Eric have mentioned a couple of things, because when you look at the life of Christ, first of all, he had a purpose. He knew why he came. He knew why he existed. I think that's one of the area a lot of men fail to identify. To say that when you don't know the purpose of something, abuse is inevitable. And so because we don't understand who we are and why we exist, and we try to find meaning in so many things, and in the quest for that, we end up abusing the very thing which is supposed to be a gift to us. Christ lived a life of sacrifice. He considered others as better than himself. He gave his life for others. For me, that is what masculinity is all about. We live in a society where masculinity has been projected as it's all about me, what I can achieve. Self-made millionaire, what I can achieve, what I have, how many women I can sleep with. It's about me, me. But masculinity is actually the exact opposite of that. Masculinity is about service. Masculinity is about giving. Masculinity is about provision. Masculinity is about protecting. And even as you talk about when I see in the news and I hear of men who are abusing women, even killing, even their children, it is a sad picture to see. It is a sad story to hear. And this is a man who's lost. This is a man who has no idea why they exist. This is a man who is using the very thing that God gave them to serve to destroy. And I think we are at a place where we need to start looking back at the kind of men that we are raising, because, we are born male and female, but becoming a man is a choice. Just because you're male does not mean you are a man. Yeah, and becoming a man is not just something that happens. It's something that you are taught. A man has to teach you how to be a man. And I think that's where the missing link is, because we live in a society where, because we don't have enough mentors, or because the mentors are too busy, what we see in the media is what mentors us. And so this breed of men that is being raised, and now we see the consequences, and now we want to react. But the question we should be asking ourselves is, how did they get to be who they are today? Who was teaching them? Where were we when we were supposed to teach them? I love what Eric is doing, because he's going for the boys, because the only raw material to make men is boys. And if you miss it when they're boys, it's harder to teach them when they become men. And so we need to go back to the basics of purpose. Why are we here? What constitutes a good man? There has to be a point of reference, because when there's no point of reference, then everybody ends up doing what they feel is right in their own sight.
Thank you so much. I think, Carol, I hope you're taking all those quotable quotes. I like the issue of mentorship. I like the issue of purpose, that if you don't know your purpose, then you're likely to be prone to abuse. Eric, now we've only seen mostly the aspects of negative masculinity. That's what the media has projected. So would you kindly help us paint a picture of the role of healthy masculinity in our society? Why do we need healthy masculinity? Because for me, I feel like it just feels like every day we need to disband the men and let everybody go back home, and let's just not have men in this world.
Danish,
Yeah, go on.
I seem to have lost you there. If you don't mind, could you ask me the question again?
I was just asking, what is the role of healthy masculinity in a society? In the era where we're seeing a lot of negative aspects of masculinity or negative consequences of, consequences of negative masculinity coming up. Eric? Curtis, are you able to take that?
Eric,
No, Eric is, okay.
there he is.
Or did
There
you
he
get
is.
the question, Eric? Okay, as Eric is, Eric, no, can you answer that?
Sorry, Danish.
Yeah. Okay.
Your mic is off, Eric.
Your mic is off, Eric. Your mic is off.
Sorry, Danish. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm saying I lost you. So I didn't.
Oh.
I only had bits and pieces. So I'm not sure what you asked.
The question is the role of healthy masculinity in our society, in a world where we are seeing the impact of negative aspects of masculinity, where people may feel like we don't need masculinity because it's destructive.
Well, we've grown so accustomed to the way masculinity has failed that we tend to define that failure as masculinity as a whole. And then, so whenever Danish or James or Curtis or whoever does something good, something positively masculine, it almost seems alien. And I liked the way, when we were beginning, the way James of course spoke about the role, when he defines masculinity, it's Christ-like, the way Christ was. And Curtis went ahead to speak about the way he works with college and university students. Now, a society that is filled with men that are positive and driven is a society that develops, it's a society that moves forward. The challenges and the issues we find and we see in our society, in security, in both crime and security, in food security, in development, can be tied to the social fabric of that specific society. We do know for us here in Nairobi, there are places you should never ever visit. Why? Is it because of the women? No, it's because of the men. We know that if you go to certain areas of this city, the guys are going to strip you naked of everything you have. They'll be rough with you. But if we now shift that and change that and look to the other side of the coin, then we begin to see that if we begin to actually engage young men and engage campus students or young professionals and have them leading positive lives as men, they begin to impact and effect change in their communities, positive change. I like to imagine and believe that we are where we are as a civilization because there were good men. There were good men who drove us forward. There were good men who had strong values and who saw the future and planned for it and drove us forward. Because that's one of the roles that men play. Men go ahead to see what lies ahead, comes back and plans for the community to go there. So that is my belief. I believe that positive masculinity has a direct positive impact in the quality of life and the place where we are going, the goals, the plans, the innovation, the creation that takes place in society and in community. So men affect that, positive or negative. But if they are positive role models and men play that positive role, then we are able to push that forward much quicker and faster.
Absolutely. I like what Eric is saying, that it's the way our media is wired, that if a dog bites Eric, it's not news, but if Eric bites a dog, that's news. And it is a negative aspect of our media. Pastor Curtis, I always, with the history and where you come from, we rarely talk about the role of intergenerational trauma in the kind of men we see today. And I kind of feel like there's a production concept I learned in school, that if you want a steel wire, you do not focus on the steel wool itself. You look at the ingredients and the process that produces steel wool. If you want yogurt the same, why are we judging why don't we look at men in their context and where they're coming from and the trauma that they carry?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Personally, I've been exhausted by having discussions about toxic masculinity without being willing to address the context in which this toxicity exists. And the truth of the matter is, men are traumatized, especially African men, men of African descent, regardless of where they live in the earth. And we're traumatized, again, intergenerationally, we're traumatized historically, we're traumatized colonially. I'm not willing to have any more conversations about toxic masculinity unless we're willing to talk about colonialism, period. I think because what colonial did for us was it defined masculinity in a way that was oppressive, entirely limiting. So there's this box, and we still have the box, and we know the box. Only certain amounts of masculine expression are allowed within that box. And that's what's in that box is what we're taught virtually every day as men. Be hard, be strong, do not show much emotion, be independent. Yeah, Rambo is our guy. This notion of this independent, hyper masculine dude killing up everybody and doesn't need any help, completely independent, doesn't show any emotion. You know, he's got a skill set, and that the skill set is designed to dominate other people, and that's what he does. It's extremely competitive, and there's a place for competition. But what we're talking about here, if we can introduce this term, we're talking about hyper masculinity. We're talking about, you know, the so-called man's man, this machismo that is not in harmony with the rest of creation. It's not in harmony with femininity. There's no entry point. There's no locus whereby femininity and masculinity can then begin to do something very, very special and be something greater than it is. So if we're not willing to talk about how these things came to be, then really we're going to keep spinning our wheels.
Thank you so much, Curtis.
Danish, let's say something. I love what Curtis is saying, because you see, there's this picture of masculinity that has been painted for us from the time we were very young, you know, and when we become that, then there's something wrong with that. But that's the picture that society celebrates. You know, that's the picture that entertains us. You know, even the movies that we see, the good girls love the bad boys. That's just the way it's been. You get, and so you end up becoming this bad boy, and suddenly society tells you, no, that's wrong. But then you look at what they're using to entertain themselves. That's exactly the picture. This guy and me, we are the same. Why is he good? Why am I bad? You know, and so we need to step back and ask ourselves, you know, if we're going to have some of these conversations, just like Curtis has said, we need to go back from the genesis of everything. You know, we can't want it for entertainment's sake, but in reality, we don't want it. No, the two of them go hand in hand. They go together. What we see is the reality that we become. You know, I was just looking at some old adverts from back in the day. It's the same picture. You know, whether it is cigarette adverts or car adverts or suits, it's just that man full of machismo, you know, with ladies oozing all over him because he's a bad guy. That's who we created. That's who we have. Why are we complaining?
Rick, you want to jump in?
Yeah, of course. You know, it's Jack Bauer, it's Denzel in The Equalizer, and Mr. McCall, just getting the job done. And that's what's toxic. You know, we portrayed this image that a man is loud, uses his position of power to get ahead, and it doesn't matter whether he kills, steals, or destroys in that process, that we will celebrate him. And that's how come, even politically, we elect and vote for the leaders that we vote for. knowing fully well, and we celebrate them. We come out in droves to celebrate them. And we admire them and we want to become like them. And the thing about us as men is that we learn through modeling, right? So the way we are wired is that we see a man do, we repeat, you know, and we are now at a time when every young man, you know, young professional gets into a job, they want to become the alpha grown up seeing and engaging with. So they'll be loud, they will maim, hurt, and kill to assert their power and authority, and you know, are constantly looking to be surrounded by women because they also want to show that they are, you know, they have some form of sexual prowess, they are good, you know, they are followed by women and they have money and they throw money around. And it's because those were the things we saw. We saw our colonial masters show us that because they had capital and land, then they could control us. And then as young men also grow up, the thing that they begin to see through the brutality in the society is that they're constantly being put down. So every young man is looking forward to the day he'll be strong enough to actually fight back. I grew up with the idea in my mind that a man is a man who always wins in every fight, right?
Yeah.
And then when I was about 16, 17 years of age, I at least knew that a man needed to defend someone. So a neighbor was passing through where I was seated outside my auntie's house, and some boys were, you know, catcalling her and disrespecting her. And I wanted to defend her. And I knew that because I was doing the right thing as a man, I could get into a fight at the same time. So then you get into a fight with 3-4 boys, and you soon realize that, you know, you're not going to win that fight. It takes a hit in your masculinity, because you think that a man should always be strong and able to fight, should use his strength. So those are some of those ideas and ideologies that we have as men, and that's how come as men we walk around with weapons. You know, you have a machete in your car, you have a whip to whip people in the street because you want to assert a certain form of authority and power. And it's because we've grown up in a society where we were clobbered and put down, and now we believe that the only way for me to be respected as a man is for me to respond in a much worse way and with more brutality than the other person.
Curtis, Eric, fantastic submission. And I think we're now getting into the crux of the matter. What are we going to do to heal this brutality that the Black man has been subjected to? And we rarely talk about it. And this brutality is not just about physical, it's also psychological. For example, I'm telling you guys, expectations about me to marry, to build a Simba, and to go and, you know, have my own home and to have my act together started coming when I was barely just after my teens. And it's still ongoing till today, you know, that I cannot just be like, sometimes I wonder, where do I go to when I'm overwhelmed? Where do I go to when I feel overwhelmed? So Curtis, where are Black men going to find healing for all this trauma and all the pain and all the brutalization that we carry, and so and we project in form of violence?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, I don't have the answer. I may have a few suggestions, but I think the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to tell the truth. We're going to have to say what's really going on inside of us and outside of us. The problem is not men. Individual men. The problem is patriarchy. It's a given set of ideas and ideologies, as Eric mentioned, that impacts us, infects us. And if we're not willing to talk about that patriarchy as being the true religion of Kenya, not Christianity. Sorry, Okumu. It's not Christianity. The religion of Kenya, the religion of America, the real pandemic is patriarchy.
Yeah.
So Paul Tillich, this great old school German theologian, He said that religion has to do with one's ultimate concern. That's religion. And so what are we ultimately concerned about? Well, we make it clear what we're ultimately concerned about by the rituals that we practice. And so ritual is the thing that we come back to over and over again when we feel stress, when we feel anxiety, or when we brush up against our own emptiness. Whatever that thing is that we keep going back to is the true religion. The rituals don't lie. We can document these things historically. And here's the truth. This is what happened last month in Atlanta, here in the US, when this white evangelical young man took a semi-automatic rifle and shot up people, particularly Asian women. And when he did so, the sheriff of Atlanta said the young man was having a bad day. And as crazy as that sounds, the sheriff was right. The bottom line is this: when men have a bad day, women die, because that's the ritual. When we brush up against our emptiness, women are raped, murdered, molested, assaulted, catcalled, abused. The problem is us. And we're going to have to deal with patriarchy as a religion. This male dominant spirit that keeps us needing to assert this dominance over women and virtually everything else. We're going to have to address that for what it is. It's a spirit, it's a religion, and it has to be destroyed the way Gideon had to destroy the altar before he could do what God actually wanted him to do. He first had to destroy the altar of fake stuff. And we're gonna have to do that too. We're gonna have to call things out for what they are. We're gonna have to tell the truth. And then perhaps, God will send forth healers to help us deal with the stuff that's actually going on inside of us as men. So that's my first contribution. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. Pasi, I'm gonna come to you. Okay.
Tell me.
How are we gonna heal? Because what Curtis is saying is so profound. I usually feel like we are caught on a treadmill of patriarchal system, but then it hurts us. But then because that's what you've been introduced and that's what you know, you keep on running that race. Is there some form of spiritual help we can get? I know Christ talks about breaking chains and opening the eyes of the blind. And, is there some form of help we can find as men so that then we can have peace?
I think we need to, first of all, agree what script we are reading from. Because if we are not reading from the same script, my truth is my truth. Your truth is your truth. Why is your truth more truth than my truth? I have my Luya cultures. You have your Luo cultures. Mungai has his Kikuyu cultures. They're not the same. There's the Luya definition of a man. There's the Luo definition of a man. There's the Kikuyu definition of a man. And so if we are not reading from the same script, we can't have this conversation, we can't solve it. Because if you are reading from your script and your script is your truth, who am I to say that your truth is not the truth? But if we have one script and we are all saying this is the script, this is the point of reference, then we can have a conversation. Because all of us have our true north. And we have agreed this is the true north. And so how you're living your life is contradicting the true north. Now, the Bible tells us that we should be renewed. Our lives should be transformed by the renewing of our minds. Because our minds fall on our true north. This is my belief. I found what Curtis said to be very interesting, because I've always looked at it from this angle, that we have very interesting Christians. Let me talk about the Kenyan context, because that's where I am. We have very interesting Christians in the Kenyan context. Anytime there's happiness or there's a tragedy, we always fall back to our traditional ways of life. When we are happy, somebody has been born, we usually say, oh, you know where I come from. When we are happy and somebody is born or somebody has graduated, or when there's a wedding, this is what we do. When we are mourning, when we are sad, we fall back to the same thing and we say, oh, you know, in our culture, when somebody dies, we must do this, we must do this, we must do this. And so the problem is we keep reading from different scripts. And when we read from different scripts, we get confused. And that is why, as men, we are confused. Because when I want to have multiple women, I justify it by going back to my traditional script or my cultural script. But when I want something else, I go back to the biblical script. And so for me, the most important thing, if we are to find solutions, is what script are we reading from? Because if everybody has their own script, we can talk until we are blue in the face. Everybody's truth will be their truth for them. And there's no way you can convince them that their truth is not their truth. So what's the script? Is it the Bible? Is it society and how fashion comes and goes? Is it what is our script?
Can I say something?
Go on, Pastor Curtis.
Because the script is patriarchy. I don't think it really even matters what ethnicity we're talking about. The script is patriarchy. Mm-hmm. Listen, I've been to a lot of churches. I've been to mainline churches. I've served in mainline churches. I've served in old colonial churches. I've served in fresh, charismatic, non-denominational churches. And I've been in Catholic church. I've never served in one, but I've been in Catholic church. And the bottom line is this. The men are operating from the same script. I've seen women abused in church. We know that there are young people being abused in church. We all know this.
Yes.
And nothing happens, almost always. There's some exceptions, obviously, but for the most part, nothing happens. We're looking at men, and usually they have some kind of status in the community based on money, based on external material possessions. And we allow them to get away with incredible amounts of pain inflicted upon people, particularly women, and we say nothing. And everyone in the entire church knows it. That's the script. And it's consistent.
That's the wrong script. Then that's the script we need to talk about, because it is the wrong script. Because people are living, we proclaim one thing in public, but when it doesn't suit us, we go back to this script that, it's almost like it's a silent script that we all know and we operate from. Then we need, just like Curtis is saying, we need to bring this script to the forefront and scrutinize it and talk about it, because it is the wrong script. As long as we keep hiding it and we don't say anything about it, we'll keep having these conversations and we will not see change. So we need to talk about that script, and why are we going back to that script, and how do we get to the right script?
Eric, how do we get to the right script?
I think we go back to the source. We go back to the source of the problem, see where we went wrong, and begin to correct that. Listen, I believe that there is a problem across the board, but it wasn't always like that. Men and the idea of masculinity has not shifted in the last maybe 100 or 200 years, right? For many cultures. And I'm cognizant of the fact that Curtis comes from a different culture and different traditions. But masculinity at a certain time was about a man being strong to protect and provide. We now live in a time when that is not necessarily true anymore. That has shifted and that has changed. But we haven't changed. What has happened is that we still define masculinity dependent on the roles someone plays. We don't define masculinity on values. We don't define masculinity on principles. We define it on a man does certain things. And that's why, whether it's in the church or in society and community, men are still looking for power. We believe power makes you a man, and they use that to abuse. The patriarchal system is about power, wealth, and brutality, just for fear, to ensure for good measure that people don't leave certain boundaries that have been set. That's what the patriarchal system is about. That's what toxic masculinity is about. It's about ensuring that only one man, there's always an alpha, that there is no space for men in a society where there is equality for everyone. Everyone is protected, everyone is happy, everyone is living their life as they deem fit. How to change that script? It has to begin with what we teach our children, what we watch, the messages that are preached from pulpits. It has to begin with the discussions we have in our homes over breakfast, over dinner, over lunch. It has to do with the discussions we have in our offices. Here in Kenya, the corporates do not engage on what masculinity means or what needs to shift and change on masculinity. There are no spaces. We haven't created spaces where what you guys are doing today, Danish and Singi, for men to discuss these issues in an authentic and honest way. We don't do that. We know we have within our small groups we discuss it, but then we don't come out and actually bring it to the public. So how do we shift? How do we change this? By having these discussions in our homes, in our offices, in our churches, everywhere, in our social gatherings, wherever you are with men, we need to start destroying that system, because that system doesn't serve us. The only thing that system does is tell you, Danish, that you need to make sure that you're going to the gym, that you're becoming stronger, that if it's Curtis in the US, that he needs to arm himself. And the day that he gets angry, the day he snaps, he can do whatever because he's having a bad day. When James goes home and he's pissed, and his daughter or his son says something that is off, then he gets angry and lets it out on the boy because he's allowed. He's a man. He was just having a bad day. We need to shift that. We need to change that.
Curtis, I'm coming back to you. And there's usually a model called transformative scenario planning, where we project the future and look at how the future is going to look like. I need you to paint for us a picture, if you can, of a world without patriarchy. How would men be in that world? What would be how would it look like? Because sometimes I feel like, and I agree with what Dr. Mshai once said, that sometimes when we do our activism by always calling out what is wrong, we sometimes may lose the of what should be. And we may be so focused on what should not be that we lose sight of what should be. What kind of a world would be without patriarchy? Because we've never lived in it, and we want to know how it would look like. Is there anywhere else in society? Is it in the Bible? Is it in the Quran? Is there anywhere that we can see that model and we start to propagate that?
Great. Again, I don't have answers to this stuff, but I do know this, that power is important. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that men want power. The problem is power is continuously being defined as power over, as opposed to power in or power through. Notions of harmony prevail when we think about power in or power through, as opposed to dominance. So societies that don't dominate people. And then, of course, now we have to talk about capitalism. Patriarchy can't exist without capitalism.
Yep.
Eric is talking about men and how men, are defining themselves. We're defining ourselves by what we have. Yeah. Now, in the capitalistic system, you can't have those things without money.
Yeah.
And capitalism is about competition. Everybody can't win in capitalism. That's not how the game is played. It is based off the concept of competition. That means for one person to win, a whole lot of people have to lose. And that's precisely what we have in the world right now. You got 26 billionaires who have more than half the resources of almost 8 billion people. It's completely unsustainable. Patriarchy can't exist outside of that particular paradigm. So we're going to have to address all of that stuff and begin to start thinking in terms of a society that treats people as human beings, regardless of what they own, regardless of what they have in terms of the accumulation of material things. We're going to have to start thinking along these terms. We're going to have to start thinking about power through, power in, as opposed to power over. We're going to have to start thinking in those terms. We're going to have to start promoting models of masculinity that are intent on giving as opposed to receiving. Listen, look at our politicians. And I'm not just talking about the Kenyan context. The patriarchy is global. Look at our politicians. Everyone's getting raises. They're the only ones getting raises consistently.
Yeah.
Everything is consistently about them. In the middle of a pandemic, we're having political rallies, contradicting our own messages to the citizens. It's ridiculous. We've got men who give and we've got men who take. We're going to have to start promoting men who give as opposed to men who take. What if we had a system whereby what made a man special, what made a man admirable in his community was how much he gives to the community, as opposed to how much he takes? What if that became the value? And what if we began promoting in the media and everywhere else that kind of man? It can happen, but we're not there yet.
Yeah. I think the key word there is what do we value?
Yeah.
What do we really value as a society? Because our values determine the kind of people that we are and the kind of relationships that we have. You know, we live in a society today where as long as you have money, it doesn't matter how you get it. You know, some time back there was a survey done amongst young people, you know, and a good number of them, especially young men, were saying it really doesn't matter how you get the money as long as you get the money. You know, that's why the corruption rates in this country are high. You know, the reason why we have not been able to defeat corruption is that the truth is, majority of us, we're just waiting for our opportunity. Right now, we are pointing fingers, but it's just because we ourselves have not gotten the opportunity. If we did get the opportunity, we would do exactly the same thing these politicians are doing. And so it comes back to what are our values? Because for me, I think one of the things that has broken down our society, especially in this country, is that we have values on paper, but in the real world, they don't exist. In the real world, unless we are the kind of society that unless we have a man watching over us with a stick, we will not do the right thing. And that is why when we are in the confines of our homes, in our secret places as men, you know, we let our passions drive us, we allow our anger to drive us, because that's how we have been raised. No value system, you know, whichever way you can get to the top, you get to the top, because we never ask, how did you get to the top? You know, I was saying the other day with a friend of mine that a good number of the rich people in this country, you cannot ask them to show you how they did it, because they didn't do it in the right way. They don't have a story to back what they have. But it's because we have placed value on what you have and not on you as Danish, not on you as Curtis, not on you as Eric. We don't celebrate. Think about this, even as we talk about men. This is something that has always baffled. We always talk about deadbeat dads, but we never celebrate the dads who stayed. We never celebrate the dads who took on the responsibility of the other dads who left. We never celebrate our men during Father's Day. When it's Mother's Day, when it's International Women's Day, there's pomp, there's color, there's flower, there's ice cream. Father's Day, we remember the week after. Oh, last week was Father's Day. So the spotlight is always on those who are doing the bad stuff. But for those who stay, those who are trying to change communities, no one says much about them. Just the other day, I was at a funeral, and this man who had died, man, everybody in the community had good things to say about him. Everybody. In fact, the preacher was saying, if God had given me a choice, I would have chosen somebody else to die. because this guy was a real example. But we don't celebrate those men. You know, those men don't bring in the money. Those men don't bring in the likes. Those men don't attract the crowd. Those men who wants to hear a good story. We want a bad story. We want a Rambo story. We want to hear about somebody who killed their wife. Those are the kind of things we celebrate. And so even for us as men, because sometimes I find that we are always pointing fingers. The question is, what am I doing? What is Curtis doing? What is Danish doing? What is Eric doing? Because if I picked one boy, if you picked one boy, if you picked one boy, and we started something, then eventually the next generation that comes after us will have at least some stable men. But I find that sometimes when we have this conversation, we are always pointing at this and that and that and that. You know, and earlier on, we also did talk about colonialism and all that. But then, okay, that happened. Do we keep looking back? What can we do now? How do we change the script? Because we are here. We are having this conversation. Where do we go from here? What can I do? Me. Unless we get to this place where we personalize it. I have two boys. Am I raising them up to be responsible men? Or am I raising them up to be thieves and murderers? Yeah? Because if every man thought about, okay, what am I doing? Then we will begin to raise up another generation of men who will understand what it means to be a man. Because I believe, like for the four of us who are having this conversation, we have a picture in our mind of what this man should be like. Who are we teaching?
I like what Percy is saying.
Danish, allow me to jump into that. Sorry, let me jump into that.
So,
I actually think that the challenge is that the good men, the good models, are quiet, seated in their corner doing their good work, and are completely unwilling or unable, due to different issues or reasons, to actually come out into society and drive change in a big way. We do have good men. We have good men in our societies. We have good models in our society. Men who model masculinity in the right way. But you'll find that those men are not willing to come out publicly and multiply or use their influence and their good power to multiply what they are doing in society. They do it in a quiet, silent way. Yeah. One of my greatest challenges as a man who runs programs for young boys is getting mentors. Yeah. Every Saturday morning. It's difficult. Do I know those men? I know them. I know them personally. They are my friends. But when you ask them to come in and step up and mentor some boys, some 10, 15, 20 boys, they begin to wonder whether, do I really have what it takes? Am I sure about what I'm going to tell these boys? But I can see that they are good men. So the good models are there in society. It's just that they are unwilling to step up. And because they are unwilling to step up, then we have the negative, evil, bad models of men who don't mind the spotlight, who do not mind at all being loud and obnoxious in society. And those are the people that our children get to interact with and see and engage with more than the positive models. So the positive models are there. We are here, the four of us, we are present. We know the values, we know the ethos that we'd like our young men to engage with and live up to. But how often do we give of ourselves? And when we began, Jemo said something that is, is one of the things that defines masculinity: service. How many of us are willing, as the good men, to create time for our societies? Or have we also been caught up in the capitalistic system of constantly trying to outdo the next person? Or are we actually willing to say, every week I'm going to give 4 or 5 hours to mentoring boys? How many of us do that? I'll submit to you very few.
All right.
Well,
Eric, thank you so much.
I think part of us know this. We can have these values inside of us. There's so much I want to say right now, but we can have these values of being honest and telling the truth and being vulnerable and, expressing our emotions and so forth. We can have that as individual men. And, that might even happen within our own spheres of influence, within our own families, for example. But let's be honest, man. We know that if we come outside with that, we're going to get slaughtered. We know this. We know that if we ever really try to be our true self and become that man that's outside of the box of masculinity that's been prescribed for us, dudes are going to kill us out here. And that's why I say this can't just be about individual men. It's got to be about more than that. That's important, don't get me wrong, but it's got to be about addressing these ideologies. I personally believe becoming a man and understanding what a man is much more caught than taught. Sure, there's information that we need, this vital, crucial information that we all have to have and absorb and internalize. But it seems like a lot of it is just taught by this modeling that Eric is talking about. I want to give you an example, a good example now, because I've said some stuff that I'm sure probably rubbed some people the wrong way. Now, I remember being part of a church where there was a lady in the church, and about every year or so, maybe once a year, she would come to church and she'd have these sunglasses, and it was clear that she had been beaten. So finally, her husband didn't go to church, but we knew where she lived and we'd seen him before. We knew of him. So several men, it's probably about 10 of us all together. We all got together and we went to their house. And we asked for the man. And we said, look, bro, we don't know you very well. We wish we knew you well. We'd like to serve any needs that you might have spiritually and otherwise. We respect you because you are this lady's husband. We respect that. But she's also our sister, and you have to respect that. You can't put your hands on her anymore. And we actually said, if you put your hands on her again, we're going to lay hands on you.
Without there.
We did. I'm telling you, some men, the only thing that they respect is other men. There was another situation. This is one of my good examples. I've got some horrible ones too when I didn't do the right thing. But I'm coming off of Matatu. This is in Buru. And there was this pretty young lady. I met her a couple times, but I can't say I knew her. She's walking and I see this guy, tall dude, looked like he might be a little high, but I wasn't sure. So he comes up on her and he's saying a bunch of things and it's clear that she's uncomfortable. So all I do is I holler out to her because I'm still a distance away. Hey, Barb, habari yako? Siku mingi. I'm doing all of this kind of stuff, right? I don't know her name is Barb, and neither does he. He doesn't know her name either. That's why I just make up a name. The point is to diffuse the situation. As soon as I started talking to this lady, even though I was still far off, he ran away. Most of the dudes that do this stuff are cowards. The truth is.
Yeah.
So just the need to be present, just the need to step up, just the need to be present in situations oftentimes is enough in terms of these individual situations, because the truth of the matter is this. These young ladies, and not a few older women as well, are our mothers. They're our sisters. They're our wives. They're our nieces. That's the truth of the matter. Yeah. I'll stop there, Danish.
No. Thank you so much for what you're saying. And I think the one thing about Msingi is that there's the freedom of expression, and we see opinions as just that, opinions, because we all have lived realities. They're very different, People are coming from very different backgrounds. For example, Curtis, I'll be very honest with you. I was just overwhelmed when I was in the activism space because it looked like the system we're fighting was so huge. And how it made me feel as Odongo personally, I felt powerless. I said, it's not possible. We cannot defeat this because then the Great Barrier Reef is dying. Or I'm seeing documentaries of shark fins in Japan. They're killing all the shark and aquatic life is dying. And here you're seeing how the system is rigged against you and electoral theft and all these things. And it made me so cynical, it made me so negative that I felt powerless, me as Odongo. You know what I did? I took a step back and said, what can I do about it? As Odongo. Forget about the system, forget about all that, what can I do about it? And I said, now that's when I started finding peace myself as Odongo. I started finding peace, and that's now how I started now doing individual things I could do. What is it within my power to treat the watchman right? Is it in my power to share what I have? Can I live in dignity? Because sometimes I feel like the way this world is broken and messed up by colonialism and by an evil system that wants to put us down, its web and tentacles are so wide and so huge that if we don't create our own sacred spaces, there's no sanity, because this system is huge and it dehumanizes and it brings you down. I think I like that. Then the second thing I've been battling with, and I need you guys, gentlemen, to help me, is there love for men, really? Is there genuine love for men? When a man is successful, they become lonely at the top in an ivory tower. When a man is poor, they also are lonely and disrespected. Are men loved for who they are? Jemo, are you just loved for being James Okumu without the roles, without providing, without being this and without being that? I feel like that's something we don't address, that men are only loved for what they can do. They're only loved for performance. What can you perform? And that's now they go ahead and perform. They perform by stealing to acquire wealth, buy a bigger castle so that they can get their chances of getting a better mate. That's all. Or they get a bigger car, because then a bigger car means respect. Then they wear nice suits, nice cologne, because even if they go to church, at the front seat is reserved for people who give better tithes. Because men are only respected for what they can provide and who they are. That's how I feel. I don't know what you guys think as we go to the question that is for us. Let's start with Jemo. I just need your response, your feeling about that.
The truth of the matter is that a lot of men are lonely. Yeah, a lot of men are lonely because if you don't have something that you're bringing to the table, you're not celebrated. Just like you're saying, you're not celebrated for being you. It's interesting you say that, because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine saying, it's interesting that, a lot of people get in touch with me because of what I can do for them.
Exactly.
Being in the media space, I can open up some doors for them. That's why they look for me. There's a time I was not in the media space. There's a time I didn't have a job. No one called me. No one even bothered to check on me. The moment I reverted back into the media space, suddenly my phone is ringing. But even apart from that, do we men love each other? Back to what I said earlier, we love pointing fingers. Danish, do I love you for being Danish? Just for being Danish. I've known you for over 15 years, I think. Do I just love and appreciate you for being Danish? Or do I love you because you can do something for me? How many men can say they have 4 people right now? You remember the story of the 4 crazy friends who carried their lame friend on a sheet and took this guy to get his healing. How many of us can say, I have 4 people right now, I can call upon them and they will stop whatever they're doing to come to my aid? A lot of us men don't have that. And that's why I was saying a lot of us men are lonely. And that is why when we lose our job or our business goes down, like we are seeing in this COVID pandemic, we lose our identity because we feel like we don't have anything that people can appreciate. People appreciate me because I open doors for them. People appreciate me because I buy this for them. People appreciate me because I make them laugh. If that is not there, if it's just me, remove the pastor, remove the radio presenter, remove the TV presenter. It's just me, James Okumu, simple guy, Jamawaburu. I've got nothing I'm bringing to the table. How many people will love me? How many people will stop me in the streets? Maybe it's just my wife and my 3 kids. Sometimes even family doesn't appreciate you because you don't have anything. So what you're saying for me, I find is true. But I think we need to begin by appreciating ourselves. We can't always point a finger at somebody else. How many people, the way I expect people to be there for me, how many people am I there for? Yeah, because it's about, Patty said it at the beginning, giving and receiving. Yeah, we have to give, we have to receive. So I can't complain that I'm not getting. Am I also giving? And sometimes, am I receiving? Because sometimes also we don't want to receive because we have got this ego that is driving us up the wall. We have to do everything for ourselves. Sometimes we don't want to appreciate the help. We don't want to appreciate the love. We have to deal with all those things. And it begins with me. I have to change me. And I have to give what I desire to see in other men. We have to create forums where we can open up and have conversation and say, dude, me, I'm hurting. Me, I'm disappointed, man. Me, I've got nothing to offer. Do you guys still love me? Do you guys still accept me? We need to have those conversations because women have those conversations. No wonder they are stronger. Having a conversation with a friend of mine and he was telling me, you know, one time he had gone to the States and they had visited this, I don't know whether it's a cemetery or it's a place where, okay, it's a cemetery, but not the cemeteries we have here. And they were looking at the people who were buried. And they realized the women are living longer than the men. The man died in his 60s, the wife lived to her 90s, and it was the majority. Why? Because as men, we have bottled up so many things, we are not having conversations. We need to have conversations, appreciate one another, just for being a man. You may not have a job, you know, may not be able to open up a door for me, but Danish, you're my brother. Curtis, you're my brother. Eric, you're my brother. I appreciate you for just being my brother. We have to start it for ourselves before we demand it of other people to do it for us.
Curtis?
I'm reading a very interesting book. It's called My Grandmother's Hands. And the argument that this guy is making, he's a therapist, physical therapist. The argument that he's making is that the trauma that we have is in our bodies. And because it's in our bodies, it has to be addressed at the bodily level. In other words, conversations alone won't get to the root of this. Yeah, when the healers that come have to point us back to our bodies and all of this rage, all of this pain, all of this insecurity and hurt, all of this doubt, the self-doubt, all of that stuff lives within us. Maybe that's why we're dying, like you say, James. Maybe that's why, you know, so many men do die prematurely, certainly earlier than our wives. You know, whatever it is that, whatever kind of healing that we look for or receive, at some point, sooner rather than later, is going to have to address our bodies. Here's the other thing I want to say. Ultimately, my goal is not to be a man. Ultimately, my goal is to be a human being. And I think in order for us to be a human being, we've got to reach beyond manhood. We've got to become almost how do you say it? Oh, I just lost it. Androgynous. You know, listen, every man has some woman in him. There is no man that has 100% testosterone and no estrogen. There's no man, like even the most manliest, whatever that means to you. No man has no estrogen. Every man has some estrogen in him. And so that should give us the ability to be empathetic, to put ourselves in women's shoes. We should be able to do that. Why? Because there's some woman in us. Now, if there was no woman in us, maybe that would be impossible. But that's not the case. We need the sisters. The sisters aren't the enemy. I hear a lot of men talking these days about the girl child as though somehow they're the enemy. They're not. The sisters aren't the enemy. We need the sisters. We need femininity. And what's amazing is that some of that femininity is within us. We've got to tap into it. We've got to learn how to do it. And the sisters can help us do that. Again, the goal is to be human. And to be human means that we know how to live out of both aspects, whether that be male or female, or masculinity and femininity. We've got to have that. Listen, Jesus had it. When you see how he treated women, when you see his vulnerabilities, when you see him dying on the cross naked, urinating and defecating on themselves, and yet still has the presence of mind to tell John, take care of my mama.
Mm-hmm.
That's manhood.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you are dead and you're dead, the women didn't kill Jesus. Not one. In fact, they were the only ones at the foot of the cross. The men that scattered. So this is not about women. This is about a system who ultimately could not deal with a wholehearted man. And that's the truth. The minute we become wholehearted, the powers that be will be after us. And you and I know it intuitively. Do we want to pay that price? And I'm actually responding to one of these questions I'm reading. It's going to cost us something to be a man. And I think intuitively we know that.
Yeah.
Are we willing to pay it?
Eric, I have a controversial question for you.
Sure.
I feel like we don't talk enough about the role of women in creating or sustaining toxic masculinity. For example, everything that is done to a male body is done to please the women. Some of them are the ones who enforce these things because some of the brutality that goes on in the male body is meant to make you tougher. Some of the people who actually sustain this are women. What do you think about that?
Well, before I come to that, let me first, tie that to the question about men receiving love. And this again will actually also be controversial. I think and I believe that one of the best gifts, and I say this in jest, but in some bit of seriousness as well, one of the best gifts that God has given, can give you as a man, is to bless you with a daughter. Because I believe that daughters love their fathers as a man unconditionally. They're the only women that can use that term in quotes, who will love you just for you. There will be no conditions. Whether you're good or bad, they'll just love you. Men are loved. I believe, and I've seen it, that men are loved because of what they can offer, what they can bring to the table. And it's not just women, it's society at large. Society has put a price tag, a value tag at a man. And that value tag has certain expectations or certain details, dress like this, drive this kind of car, live in this neighborhood, go to this school. So they are different. There are different things that people place. There are different tags that people place on you. So what happens, and there's an amazing program that is run actually in the US called The Masks We Live In. And, they talk about what are the masks that we've been forced to wear and to walk around out in society. Every morning, before we walk out, we put on a garb to act and to show up in society. Ties again back to what Curtis was saying about if we were to leave our homes in our authentic selves, society would eat us up. So we are constantly coming out, not with the armor of Christ. We put on an armor to protect us and to project a certain image in society. And that image we project is the image that we've been taught to accept. So does society push and, actually fuel toxic masculinity? Yes. Yeah. Because you cannot have patriarchy on one hand and want to enjoy the benefits of patriarchy and then fight toxic masculinity. They are one and the same thing. They thrive together. Each controls and
Oh no, he was preaching too.
We've lost Eric. Oh man, Eric, shucks.
Eric
All
was
right.
preaching.
As Eric is coming back, let me read some comments. Ian Kisa says talk is cheap, though when it comes to men loving each other, it's Eric. You'd finished?
Yes, I just heard you say you lost me. I don't know where you lost me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Ian is saying talk is cheap, though when it comes to men loving each other, it's in actualizing it that becomes a challenge. Our ego is usually the greatest undoing for many. Then Mbugua asks, as if he's just throwing in the hand, tutaanzia wapi kupendana jameni? Tutaanzia wapi kupendana? Jemo, tutaanzia wapi kupendana as men? as you're saying. Mercy Kelly says, maybe we need to ask ourselves why, or even if men can actually receive love.
But do we need, can I ask this question to the panel? Is it love in the, and maybe it's because our understanding of love nowadays is much more romanticized than what it ought to be, but is it that we need love as men, or we need the honor and the respect? Because there is a love Mashidavi, let's hug and cry, which I'm not sure. It has its place. It has its place. It has its place. But at the same time, we can't have men crying and, you know, hugging and singing Kumbaya throughout.
No, Eric.
I'm serious.
We cannot define. We just said we cannot define to men who they want to be. Let men be who they want to be. If you want to feel like crying and hugging, it's fine. Go on and do it. If you want to feel like machismo works for you,
right.
As long as you're not hurting other people.
All right. But I'm curious.
No, because Eric, now let me ask you honestly now. How different is that from what we are told out here? The men can be this, men can be this. If within our own circles we define to men what they're supposed to be. That a man who perhaps wears the emotions on their sleeves is perceived as a certain type of man, or a man who's like this, you know, because I feel like sometimes we ourselves are very hard on each other. We are hard on each other. And I like what Kati said, that we need to bring out the femininity in us. Men are capable of showing empathy and compassion. It is possible for a fellow man to sit with you in the place where you're crying and just keep quiet. It is possible to cry with you. It's fine. You know, yeah. And I think there's a place for that.
I agree. I agree there's a place for empathy. Actually, one of the definitions that we use in our programs about masculinity, we say that men, we use the word decide because masculinity is about decisions. And I liked something that Kati said earlier. And, you know, it's so profound that masculinity is more caught than talks, right? And, you know, so for us, those values, and their values, it's discipline, it's excellence, it's character, it's integrity, it's determination, and empathy. We believe that those 6 things, those 6 values and ethos are, you know, are the things that make up who a man is. So empathy is important. And I have absolutely no problem with them, you know, those males who are, you know, are emotional or want to be a bit more emotional than the other man. But the question I'm asking is, when we speak about love, it's not about emotions. I'm not talking about the emotional part of it. I'm speaking about love. When we speak about love and me having love towards you as my friend, as my brother, is that love the kind of love that I'll be there and stand with you as a brother, that your comrade in arms? Or is it the love of, you know, Oishe? You know, I'm just sitting there feeling, you telling me your sad story and me just keeping quiet and saying, what do I want to sit with you and encourage you and remind you that, listen, brother, we are going to get through this. You know, even Christ, before he got crucified, got a few men around him. Yeah. And when those men started telling him, you know, you cannot die, he told them, no, this has to happen. So we need to be careful that as we speak about that love, it's a love that stands with you on both ends and, you know, on your right, on your left, to hold you up, not to, you know, buy you flowers, chocolate, and just moan and weep and do nothing.
I think for me, Eric, it's more of respect. There's something that Kati said earlier, which I thought was good. You know, he talked about first being a human being. Yeah. Before we even get to the male or female, you know, we are all human beings. And that just the respect and the acceptance that I'm a fellow human being, just like you, irrespective of what I have or what I don't have. I am human. Yeah. That respect, that acceptance. Because many of us struggle because we feel left out. You know, there's something we do as men every time we get together as men. You know, when we get together as men and we don't know each other, it doesn't matter where we come from in the world. The first thing we do is we size each other up, because there has to be a hierarchy. We always do that. So who are you? I'm Danish. So Danish, what do you do? I'm asking you what you do because I want to place you. Are you above me? What kind of car do you drive? Where do you live? And based on those things, then there's a certain level of respect I will give you. Not because you're a human being, but because you live in a certain neighborhood, you have a certain kind of phone, you do a certain kind of job, you have a certain kind of title. Those are the things for me that we should push aside and look at Danish Odongo. Forget about what he does, where he lives, how much money he has in the bank. He's human, just like me. The same respect I would want others to accord to me is the same respect I will accord to him. I'll tell you about a funeral I went to on Saturday. And one of the things a lot of people said about this gentleman when passed on is that this gentleman respected everybody, irrespective of title or whether they were male or female. He respected everybody. The way he interacted with people, the way he addressed them, the way he treated people, he treated everybody with respect. And everybody in the community wanted to come for his funeral, even though we have restrictions of how many people can attend the funeral, because he impacted their lives, not because he gave them money. He didn't have anything to give. He just gave them respect and acceptance. And I think that is what a lot of us, not even a lot of us, that's what every human being craves for. Just respect and acceptance. That I'm a fellow human being like you. I may not have money and property, but I have ideas. I have something to say. I am alive. I am here. For me, that's how I look at it.
Okay, before I come back to you, Curtis, let me read a few comments here because we have only about 7 minutes to go. It's absolutely not okay. Evelyn says that what we as a society is lacking is humanity in speaking truth to justice and creating spaces to share greatness of our communities, which is so often unacceptable for many. Speaking truth is so unacceptable in our communities, and that's why patriarchal systems thrive. Curtis says that if men go out with their true authentic selves, they would get slaughtered. Is the redemption of men, even for future generations, something worth dying for? Teresa Oguda asks that. Great conversation, folks. Do you think honesty and love can change the society's will? That's Michael Gitau. You could note some of this so that in your last comment, in your closing remarks, you could just make a comment on the one that you feel. A man who represented the values being encouraged here in Job chapter 29. See a man who championed and was involved in his community, championed justice. That's Collins Peter talks about Job. So does it then mean we need to work towards ending capitalism and foster socialism? I think Curtis already alluded to that. That is the ultimate goal. That unless we destroy capitalism and socialism, it doesn't matter. Rather, enforce socialism. I don't know what that means, but anyway, capitalism we know is the problem. Evelyn Achieng says that. Partnership between men and women needs to be celebrated more. I agree with you that that's Ronald Nathan. We need to identify and promote African traditional models of men and women in successful collaborations in family, community, and wider society. Ronald is asking. Perhaps are we so caught up in the Western or Eurocentric views of man and woman that we've forgotten about who we are as a people? So what's the alternative script, Patrick? That was answered. And last but not least, there's somebody here who's saying from Alfred, whether financially empowering women who are socialized to see men as breadwinners and yet live with the reality of dependent men cause mental health challenges for women and men, drive men into substance abuse and stuff like that. Anyway, gentlemen, I need us to finish this on, sometimes I've come to learn in this space, that sometimes we don't even have to be in a hurry to look for solutions, we just need to be authentic. And sometimes just authenticity is being truthful. Oh, I like what you all said. For me, what I've come to learn that to love another man or to love a friend is to be there for them the way they'd want somebody to be there for them. So if Jemo wants a brother to go hunting and that's what you love, me, I'm not into hunting, I'm going to take it because that's what you love. If Curtis perhaps, is into cake, fine. Gifting is also normal, also it's okay, And so I think that's so that then we avoid the trap of the narrow definition of masculinity that then excludes people who perhaps may be different or may have been raised in different contexts, and they also suffer out of that. And now I want to start with Pastor Curtis. I need your final comments as you answer any question that you feel you may have. 1 minute actually.
Okay, I want to just say something briefly about love in both its masculine and feminine aspects and dimensions. You know, this is hypothetical, but this does exist to some degree in my own family. I have a daughter and I have 2 sons. Now, my children know that their mom will give them unconditional love. She will nurture them. They can always come to her and get a hug. They know that it's going to be all right, whether they did good or bad. They know that it's this constant affirmation, reassuring, nurturing. Now, masculine love is not always that. Masculine love, I can come to my children, I can say, you know, I see the effort you put here. You're better than this. I know you. And I know that you can do better than this. Try again. Do it over again. Do it over again. And I might have to say that 5 times until they get it right. I'm still loving them too. But this is a more demanding kind of love. This is a love that's pushing you toward greatness. Now, if you have the demanding kind of love and you don't have that foundational nurturing love, then that becomes problematic. But if you have that foundational nurturing kind of love, and yet no one is really pushing you, pushing your limits, stretching you to be the fullest of your potential, that feminine love becomes problematic as well. So it's like salt. You know, you've got 2 molecules, right? The sodium and then the chloride. You know, you got the positive and the negative. It's when those things come together that love becomes very, very, very powerful. And that's why I keep saying we've got to come back to being a human being. The truth is there are times when my sons need to see the feminine love in me. And there are times when my daughters need to see the masculine love in my wife. They both coexist. They coexist within us. And we've got to get to that place. I'm done.
Eric? Can't hear you, Eric.
Eric, your mic is off.
The mic is off, Eric.
Sorry about that. Even as we engage with men and we try redefine what masculinity is and how, you know, society engages with men, it all comes back to us as men. It has to start with us. We need to begin. I seem to have lost everyone.
No,
Are we together?
We got to.
Sorry. You know, it has to begin with us being our authentic selves first. And in that authenticity, there are certain aspects of masculinity that we have to embrace. We have to be very careful that in the defining of masculinity, we are not defining it, opposite what femininity is, or wanting to, find a balance. And I find that a lot in these discussions, gender discussions, that there is something inherently wrong with us as men. We need to be just a bit more feminine. That's very, very dangerous. I find that dangerous, to be honest. I believe that we can actually coexist when we are our true selves, without us having to take on any feminine aspect, or even the females taking on any masculine aspect. Let's just be our authentic selves. Let's go out into society with our authentic selves and playing out those values and goals. I feel that masculinity should be defined along values versus roles that we play. Yeah, the values need to speak to our roles, not the other way around. Thank you. Thanks for this.
Jemo?
I think, men, we need to be honest with ourselves. We need to take off our masks and just talk about our fears, talk about what we're anxious about, talk about our disappointments, talk about our failures. We need to expose the real us to each other, because I think, I usually say this, that unless you expose your nakedness, you will not get healed. When you go to the doctor, you have to expose your nakedness for them to be able to determine what's wrong with you, for you to get healed. And I usually say that if a woman is scared of her nakedness, she can never bring forth life. And so, even for us men, if we are afraid of our nakedness, we will keep having conversations but never finding solutions. Because we need to get to a place where we can say, I'm scared. I'm scared. Scared because I've lost my job. Scared because I don't know how to feed my family. I'm scared because when I get angry, I get violent. That is who I am. I need help. We need to get to a place where we acknowledge I am lonely. We need to get to a place where we acknowledge I am a broken man. When you take away the suit, the fancy hairstyle, and the nice shoes, I am a broken man. I need help. I was thinking about this today. You know, as a pastor, when I have issues, who do I go to? Because everybody comes to me with their issues. But who do I go to? I also get disappointed. I'm also afraid. I'm also at a place where I don't have answers. Several times, Curtis has said this in today's conversations. I don't have answers for that. When we are that honest with ourselves and with each other, I believe then we will begin to find solutions and ways we can bring about change. We need to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. We need our younger men to see us. The Bible says older men teach the younger men. I love what Eric said earlier. Let's find the time. You know, every man tells the story of them being the superhero. But the question we need to ask ourselves is, are we open enough to allow people to see the Clark Kent and not the Superman? Because before there was a Superman, there's Clark, the clumsy one, who doesn't have any superpowers, wasn't achieved anything. We have to be honest enough to reveal that to one another and to allow society to see that as well, because only then will we be able to start finding solutions so that the next generation is not more messed up than we are in this generation. But you know what? There's hope, because we have forums like this where we can have these conversations. And I know several other men who are also doing something, impacting the next generation. Eric, you're one of them. Curtis, you're another one. Danish, you're one of them. I am one of them. So let's keep having these conversations. Let's keep doing what we can do in our small circles, because those small circles, when they join together, I'm telling you, we're raising up an army of men who will change things in the next generation. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. I'd like to request your indulgence just for one more minute. Musa James says he's calling for practical expression of love, one that brings action points to address a situation than one that just commiserates and understands the situation but offers no practical way out. We cannot be all crying and feeling sorry for each other without giving a way out and affecting the outcome we need. Jemo, this we are not discussed, but I need you to pray. And my heart, how I feel right now is that one, I need you to pray for healing for the wounds that have been inflicted by the ungodly aspect of masculinity. But above all else, I need you to pray for men that we may find our true north and be authentic self. I believe in prayer. I believe that prayer does it. So Jemo, please this is the first time we're doing this, and I'm happy we're doing it.
Okay, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to have these open conversations where we can discuss issues that affect us as men. The truth of the matter, Lord, is that as men, we need help. As men, many of us have lost our way. And Lord, we need to find our way to that which you intended for us to be. Lord, society has corrupted the picture we have of masculinity and what a man is. Father, Lord, a lot of men are hurting. A lot of men are lost. A lot of men have no idea which direction to go. But Lord, society has taught us to be straight, have the straight face, have this, have this outlook that everything is okay. But Lord, on the inside, we are broken. On the inside, we are weeping. But we are too scared to allow society or other men to see our tears, because then they will either point fingers at us or laugh at us or call us weak. Father, I pray that even as we continue to have this conversation, my Father, Lord, may we find healing, may we find restoration, may we find what true authentic masculinity is, according to your plan and according to your purpose. May we not give up, my Father, Lord, because I believe one man can bring about change in our community. Lord, I pray for every man who's been part of this conversation today, those who are listening in, and Lord, whatever fears they have, whatever they're anxious about, whatever brokenness they have on the inside of them, whatever wounds have been inflicted on them, either by their fathers or by society, Lord, either by their families, Lord, you will help them to deal with the wounds, to bring about healing and restoration, that those wounds may become scars that they can use to tell their stories that will inspire the next generation of men to arise and to become all that you have called us to be. Abba, Father, I thank you for what you have begun doing through various platforms like this one, and the different men and women that you're raising up to begin to address some of these issues that we have hidden and not be comfortable to talk about for such a long time. I pray for every man, Lord, who's out there trying to do something to impact the next generation, that, Lord, they will not grow weary, and my Father, they will not faint, but that, Lord, in the name of Jesus, you will give them the strength, the encouragement, the resources, the partnership that they need to be able to get the job done. Lord, we thank you, we honor you, and we give praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
And till next time, adios, and may God bless you and have a love. Thank you so much to my panelists for an amazing work. Thank you all.
Awesome.
Asante sana.
Asante.